Hi friends, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I am showing you Cracked Polish's new Three Little Pinkies collection. I cannot get over how freaking adorable the name is, but this is obviously a little trio of sheer neutrals. So they're gonna be perfect for a your nails but better look, or the base for French tips, or any kind of negative space nail art. As usual, I will save more of my thoughts after some comparisons, but I did want to give a big thank you to Cracked Polish for sponsoring today's video. But without further ado, let's just get into the swatches.
The first shade in the trio is Pinkie Pink, and it's described as a soft pink jelly. I think I would say this pink is more cool leaning than warm, and it almost has this hint of purple where it's kind of like an orchid pink color, but obviously it's still very sheer. It is a jelly polish after all. You can see on the first coat I got really nice coverage and you get a decent amount of color. Even though it is a jelly, it wasn't as sheer or translucent as I was expecting, so these are pretty pigmented, I'll say, where you can build them up to be even fuller coverage. I actually only stopped my swatches at 2 coats because that's just how I would wear these kinds of shades. I think a third coat would blur your nail line even more, but it still wouldn't be 100% opaque. So again, this one had a really nice formula that was super easy to work with, very self-leveling, and here is a full hand swatch in 1 coat, and I feel like it's just one of those perfect sheer pinks. Next up we have Peachy Pink, and this is, you guessed it, a peach pink jelly. So this one is a little bit deeper and warmer than the last shade, and of course, don't worry, I will be showing comparisons of all three soon enough. And before I talk more about the color, I did want to touch on the formula for this one. Even though it is also described as a jelly like the other 2 polishes, I found that this one was a little bit more pigmented, so it leaned more like acrylic for me. I'm not sure how well you can tell, but I feel like on the first coat I didn't get the best application, where it didn't really self-level that nicely, but I think it did even out for the most part on 2 coats. It just felt a little finicky, so I wasn't sure if maybe I just needed to add some thinner to my bottle to make the application smoother. I'm not sure if I just was overworking the polish. I know sometimes I can be a little heavy-handed, so maybe I was just dragging some polish off, but that aside, the color was still super beautiful. Even though it's more of a warm tone sheer, I still found it really flattering. And lastly, we have Brownie Pink, which is a pink jelly with brown undertones. I feel like that description is so spot on because it definitely is like a medium pink, but with a nice brown undertone. At first, I was a little nervous that it just was not going to look nice on me because it's just not my shade of neutral. It's a little too deep compared to the other pinks that I usually like, but I ended up really liking it. It wasn't too dark at all, and it just gave such a nice wash of color, and I found the formula on this one was very similar to Pinkie Pink, where it was really smooth, super easy to work with, but still very buildable at the same time. Like, I was just really impressed with how pigmented these were. They just look so nice whether you're wearing them in 1 coat or 2. Again, here's a full hand swatch in 1 coat, and I feel like you can see the least amount of pink in this shade, at least on me. Maybe it's hard to tell, but here I have a little collage of all 3, and I know the difference is minimal because again, this is 1 coat, but I love having a subtle difference to find your perfect match. My nails are also a little bit stained, so keep that in mind. That might be affecting the color a little bit, but even still, I think Pinkie Pink is kind of my perfect match. I think I usually go for cooler tone pinks when it comes to these sheer neutral shades, just because they balance out the staining. Like you can see in Peachy Pink and Brownie Pink, my tips are just a little too dark for me. I also had to show these in a Skittle in natural lighting so you can get a better idea of how these look in real life. From my pointer to pinky finger, I'm wearing Brownie, Pinkie, Peachy, and then Brownie again. Then on my thumb, I have both Pinkie and Peachy, again in 1 coat each, and the difference is pretty minimal. But then once you do a second coat, you can start to see the difference a little bit more. I will say, I do think that Peachy Pink and Brownie Pink, which are on my ring finger and pinky finger respectively, are the most similar of the 3, but they still are not dupes. They really just have those subtle differences where Peachy is more more warmer leaning, and I would say maybe Brownie Pink is more of like a neutral shade. I guess it could still be warm leaning, but just more on the brown spectrum versus peach. As I'm sure you all know, sometimes I just struggle with describing the differences in a polish's undertone, but hopefully you can see the differences. And here I wanted to show the three polishes all together under my desk lighting. Again, Peachy Pink in the middle and Brownie Pink look the most similar, but they're not dupes. Now getting into comparisons, for Pinkie Pink, I wanted to start by showing this next to Olive Ab's Rose Quartz, which is her light, milky sheer pink, but as you can see, this is very, very white base, so definitely not a dupe. Something a little closer, I think, is Dimension Nails Strawberry Soy Milk, but it's still a little too white base compared to Pinkie Pink, and I want to say it's a little bit warmer as well, but it's not as warm where it's more closer to Peachy Pink. I thought the closest shade that I had to Pinkie Pink was Rosewater Jelly. Well, it is the closest shade. It looks like it's super close in the bottle because there are these like medium, cooler toned pinks, but Rosewater is a smidge darker, but it's also a lot more sheer too. It might be a little hard to tell on the first coat alone because they're both pretty sheer looking. I guess you can see that Rosewater is a little bit darker, but I guess what I mean by being more sheer is that Rosewater Jelly has that true glassy translucent jelly finish, and Pinkie Pink just has a bit more pigmentation. Then for Peachy Pink, I wanted to show this next to Cirque's Chiffon, which is one of my go-to sheers if you couldn't tell by how empty it is. It's a sheer peachy leaning pink shade, but it's obviously way too light and white based. Then here it is next to Olive Ab's Crystal, which is the other sheer, but this one is more of that peachy, warmer tone. And as you can see, it is just not comparable at all regarding the color, and again, it's just a little too white based. So I thought to be a little more on the nose, I can show it next to Cirque's Peach Jelly, which is a lot darker than the previous sheers, but as you can see, this one's a little too warm, so it wasn't an exact match. And then I remembered about Cirque's Rose Jelly, and I was convinced that these were going to be dupes. I mean, looking at them side by side in the bottle, they look like they are the same kind of shade. I mean, maybe you can tell that Rose Jelly is a little bit deeper, but it's really noticeable once you see them on the nail. This is just one coat each, and Rose Jelly just looks so much darker than Peachy Pink. I feel like it almost has this brownie neutral kind of color to it, but it really is one of those like blush rose kind of shades. So again, even though they look similar in the bottle, they just are not comparable at all. Since Rose Jelly is just so much deeper and again a little brownie looking, I thought maybe it's worth comparing it to Brownie Pink. There's an obvious difference just from the bottle shot side by side, where Rose Jelly is warmer. I mean, you saw it looked really similar to Peachy Pink in the bottle. So I was curious to see how these two looked on the nail, and on the first coat, it might be hard to tell, but there is definitely a difference where Rose Jelly is just a lot warmer and again, a little bit darker than Brownie Pink, which I was kind of surprised by. I did also want to show Brownie Pink next to Dimension Nails Chocolate Cashew Milk, which is her version of a brown milky jelly. That one is definitely a brown and not a pink leaning brown. Like, I'm pretty sure there's no pink undertones in that shade at all. So I guess that one is even more neutral than Brownie Pink is. Again, it might be hard to tell the difference on the first coat alone because they're so sheer, but once you build them up in two, you really see the difference where Brownie Pink is obviously a little bit more pink leaning and Chocolate Cashew Milk has no pink. And the very last comparison that I have for Brownie Pink is with Cirque's Georgette, which is one of their other sheers that's more of like a deeper kind of pink that looks a little bit brown. So in the bottle, I would say that they look like an identical match, and even on the nail, the differences were super minimal. Here on one coat alone, they can easily be dupes. I feel like you can't see where one color ends and the other begins. Even when you build them up in two coats, it's really hard to spot the difference. I think I would say that Brownie Pink has a little bit more of that pinky color, so it's like a little warmer maybe. But honestly, I think I would just call these dupes.
So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons for Cracked Polish's Three Little Pinkies collection. As always, I would love to know what your thoughts are on this release because generally I think these are really nice. I think it's really great for brands to put out their own line of sheers and neutrals because they're always gonna be a little different. And I know it might seem kind of frustrating to have like 3 pinky neutrals, but again, they have different tones and undertones which are gonna be so beneficial for people trying to find the right sheer for them. Out of these 3, I'm definitely partial to Pinkie Pink because I find that to be the most flattering on me. Not that I think the other 2 look bad by any means, but if I'm going for a sheer neutral for like French tips or negative space nail art, which I love to do, I definitely would be reaching for Pinkie Pink the most. But I can also see myself reaching for the other 2 shades to wear them on their own and build them up in more like full coverage looks while still being like a little squishy because obviously I'm a fan of that kind of look. By the way, I did actually go back and add some thinner to Peachy Pink and that definitely did help the formula and the feel of the polish where it felt more consistent with the other 2 being like that sheer, almost thinner kind of color where it looks a lot better on one coat because it's not as pigmented as when I first swatched it, if that makes sense. So again, generally the formulas were really nice and easy to work with. You might just need a little bit of thinner in 1 or 2 of them depending on your preference though. If you don't already have any kind of sheer neutral shades in your collection or you're looking to expand the shades that you do have, I definitely think these 3 are really nice and worth trying out. They are already available on Cracked Polish's website, which I will have linked down below. And as a reminder, I am an affiliate with Cracked Polish, so if you do use my link, you're going to be directly supporting me and my channel. As always, a big thank you for your support because it really means a lot. But even if you aren't planning on picking these up, I would still appreciate if you like the video, especially if you did find the comparisons helpful, or just leave me any and all thoughts that you have down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!